If I have to point out one book that changed my life, it has to be this one. The Mountain Is You. I have since read this book 3 times.
Oh, wow!
And each time I read it, it just gets better and better. And there's always little nuggets of knowledge. And as you can tell, it's like full of notes and I've highlighted a lot of it in it. When I first got this book, I was at a very low point in my life. I was at the end of my career, my relationship, and I lost my dog who is so close and dear to me, my one and only true love. I was in the dumps. There are a lot of videos out there and reviews of this book, and I'm not gonna be doing that. I'm just gonna pick out a few points in this book that helped me in my then situation that was applicable for me. So you can say that I'm cherry picking a little bit. Yeah, there was a very good video by Daya, and she used this book to help her in her career. So in my case, it was helping me out of a slump. So I'm just gonna pick out some of the quotes in this book that helped me pivot my life. The first and foremost quote was in the beginning of this book that opened my eyes. And it says, "Your new life is gonna cost you your old one." And as I read that quote, I pondered a little bit and I fathomed, am I gonna be able to do this? In the depths of me, I don't want to lose my old life. I was trying to cling on to an old relationship. I was trying to cling on to an old version of myself that was, just to put it bluntly, surviving. I wasn't thriving. I wasn't living in abundance of happiness or joy or wealth. I was just, floating, like not really here nor there. I was so comfortable doing that to a point that I don't want to give up this comfortable level air quotes. And that came the second quote, which is, "Sometimes we settle for what we are handed because we don't know we can ask for more. Sometimes we run our lives on autopilot for long enough that we begin to think that we no longer have a choice." So while I was reading the book, I was looking back, and while I read that quote, I was reminiscing my life. The past 7 years, I was living in Australia with my ex, having my dog, teaching yoga. Don't get me wrong, it is a good life. I'm comfortable, but I'm not my best self. And I don't want to be ungrateful. I was not utilizing my best potential. So it got to a point where I was just on autopilot a lot. It almost sounds shameful to admit that I was a yoga teacher, but I was so disconnected. I was in my head a lot. And to be honest, I wasn't having the best mental health back then because I was honestly juggling a lot of things. It just got to me that I almost forgot how to live my life, how to enjoy small things, how to go with the flow. Just to give you an example, I was dealing with anxiety back then, and even things like driving the car to know where I'm going to park, or how the traffic is, how the weather is, and all this thing, and the conditions are not met. I would not break down, but I would not have the best driving experience, and it's just not looking back, it was just not a safe way to drive. I have to put my glasses on because I can't read from the book. That brings me to my third quote that I love from the book. It says, "We are not really wired to be happy. Humans are wired to be comfortable. Humans are so good at surviving in a situation that we lost the plot, because we are meant to thrive. We are meant to live our best life and not go through day-to-day resenting, avoiding, or resisting something. We have made such situations so comfortable for us that we forgot how it feels like to thrive." When I read that quote, I was like, okay, yeah, that's me. And it's not out of a position of disconnect. It's just that we We are such good survivors. Human beings can survive millions of years on this planet with harsh conditions, and we survive, but in this day and age, we manage to carve ourselves out in a little nook of comfortability out of the uncomfortable. I can't say that it's a bad thing, but it's certainly not a good thing. For my situation back then was only just surviving. There were so many areas in my life that I was just skimming past because I was either avoiding it because it was so uncomfortable. I had no means, or I didn't have the resources to help myself out of it. And that brings me to the next quote. Your triggers are your guides to freedom. So what I see, how I interpret this is as your triggers are your teachers. They are telling you which area in your life needs addressing, needs a revamp, needs a re-education, needs a re-evaluation. Could it be socially, financially, mentally, physically, health, anything that could help make or break you? In my opinion, triggers can be your pivot point. It can be something that shows you this is something that is your stumbling block, and you might need to look at it hard to even be able to come out of it on the other end. In my case, it was finance. I was independent for a good part of my adult life. I started working very young at 17. My education was paid for in terms of a scholarship. So my parents didn't really have a lot of issues giving me an education. When I first came to Australia, it was the start of everything. Like seriously everything. Like my career, my relationship. It was a brand new relationship. It was not new, but it was new as a couple living together. So there was a lot of things that is stacked on top of this new life that I have in Australia that has a very steep learning curve. So I was juggling a lot of things at the same time, and one of the most prominent thing that I refused to address was financial literacy. I was relying on my ex a lot to have a quality of life that in hindsight was seriously not healthy. When I was in that situation, I was just in my rose-colored lenses, and I was thinking, yeah, this could work, and I was overcompensating in other areas of my life, contributing towards the relationship in different ways that I thought would make up for the lack of financial capabilities. So now looking back, it was ill-informed coping mechanism. As a couple with no kids and a dog, we should be living our best life. So when I read this book, it opened my eyes to what my coping mechanism was, and that was, in Brianna's word, the mountain that I need to overcome. So the first most important thing that I did was to recognize my mistake and to acknowledge where I currently am in my situation. Not to turn a blind eye, not to put on the rose-colored lenses, not to create excuses. We did what we did in the past with the limited knowledge that we have. So not to say that nobody is to blame for anything, but there is accountability. So I am responsible for my actions back then, and I take full responsibility for it, even though it is not with any ill intention. That is the first thing I did. And the second thing I did was once I woke up to the reality of my situation, I started to educate myself and be proactive and work towards the version of myself that I would like to be. Someone who is financially independent. Third thing was, what I did was I challenged my thoughts and believed in terms of being financially stable. I was in a position, I was a yoga teacher. In Australia, yoga teachers are not very well paid. Unless you work, I don't know, if you take 5-6 classes a day, as well as I was assuming a role of a yoga teacher. How do you call, like a bleeding heart, I am of this, because there is this preconceived notion of a yoga teacher and how they should act. And we are all for integrity, philosophy, and spirituality, and being financially driven goes against that value. And I was assuming that role. And coming back to my relationship breakdown, I was in such a bad state. Like, I've had relationship breakdowns before, but nothing has of this sort of level. I think people say that all the time because they forget, their last previous breakup, and they think, oh, this one, the current one, is the hardest. Maybe that's the case. But then I realized that there's a part I play in this breakdown. I can't say it's for all the relationship breakdown, and majority of it takes two to clap. So I own what I did in the relationship, and that helped me move on. And this is going to be the last point that I'm going to share today about this book. There's so much more for me to share, but it's just not going to be one of those lengthy videos. It's just what is most valuable to me. And the last point is, she mentioned that we have to remember that feelings, while they are valid, they are often not real. They are also often not accurate reflections of reality. They are often always an accurate reflection of our thoughts. And I started diving deep into this, and I found many other authors who have a deeper extent of knowledge in terms of thoughts and feelings. And what I can conclude is thoughts leads to feeling, and what you feel also create thoughts. But you can break this. You can, first and foremost, like what Brianna said, your thoughts, your feelings are valid, but they are not real. They are not the actual representation of your circumstances. They are developed or created through your inner narrative. And your inner narrative is something that has been there probably since childhood. Something that your beliefs or your condition has taught you to believe. If I like something that is expensive, my mom would say, don't buy it because it's too expensive. We come from a very frugal household back then. But when I started working and become independent, and I started buying expensive stuff, I could afford it, but buying it, when I bought it, I felt guilty. And that still is not good as well. So it's from my old conditioning, my childhood conditioning, to believe that buying expensive stuff means shame or guilt. And I challenged that. I had to challenge that, and I had to rewire my thinking, not to have a valid reason to buy expensive stuff, but I'm worthy of what I desire. That is the basis of self-love. If you feel guilty owning something, that means there's something in your life that is lacking, that you're still guilty of. And that is not a very healthy way of thinking. We deserve anything in this world that we put our heart into. Like, we human beings, like, we are allowed to own things. We are allowed to drive the cars that we desire. We are allowed to desire the kind of partner that we want, and there shouldn't be any guilt, because if there is guilt, means there is something that you're lacking in your life that you're not addressing. And if I want something, if I want a particular shoe or bag or clothes or car, I don't have to justify to anyone that I deserve it. I deserve whatever I work hard for, and you shouldn't feel guilty at all. And that changing that belief for myself has helped me immensely. Just from her one sentence that she highlighted in her book, this self-sabotaging belief that I have, I totally pivot from a self-shaming, guilt-ridden person in terms of my financial situation, to someone who is very confident. I do not overspend, but I know every dime and penny I spend on myself is worth it, because I'm worth investing into. And what I invest in myself is to reap bigger benefits in future, just for my well-being, and I'm worth that well-being. There is still so many things I can derive from this book, but I will not make this video longer than it is. I think I might read this the 4th time, you never know. To say that this book has changed my life is not giving this book enough credit. It did help me, put me on a very good trajectory towards someone that is truly me. If you can go out and get this book, please do so. If you are someone who is on your personal development journey, self-growth, or if you are in a ditch or you feel stuck in any areas of your life, it's there to help. It's a good starting point, and it was my first textbook on life, if you can say that. Nobody teaches you this in school, you know. They don't teach you how to get yourself out of a ditch. And this is something that you are left to explore yourself. Thank you for watching, guys. I really enjoy sharing my thoughts on this book, and I would really like to make more videos of this sort and sharing my experiences and my thoughts. And if you like my video today, please don't forget to subscribe, comment, or even drop me a thumbs up if you like this video. See you next time for the next video, and enjoy. Bye.